Yeah, hopefully be more natural tonight. So the business overview, well, look, we've been in 20 years in business. So 99 we started, and in fact, the journey has been 22 years. It was 97 when we actually wrote our first business plan when we came back from a holiday to the States. So before we had kids, we were, 28 years old or so. I'd been to the States. I was a passionate home brewer, and we were thinking about starting a business. We were already living in Woodend. I'm from up that way already. And we weren't looking to do the tree change because we were already up there, but we wanted to create a job locally for ourselves. So we didn't want to commute anymore. We wanted to create a job locally, and that's what we're looking for, something. As I said, as a passion home brewer, we're on holidays in the States. We just came across a few small brew pubs around Colorado and Aspen and Denver and so on as we're driving around, and that really planted the seed. And one of the things that really inspired us was, hey, these guys are obviously got no money, just like us. They're ordinary folks having a go, and that really inspired us to get started. And just to give you a picture of the landscape, then that predates Little Creatures by 2 years when we first started our business. Predates Stone and Wood by almost 10 years. So it was pretty crazy times to probably think about starting a brewery. And to be honest, I sort of had a clear thought that back then, a bit of vision that, hey, these breweries and the craft brewing industry is going to come. I'm a passionate brewer, I'm a home brewer, we want to start a business, let's do this. I think the industry is going to come. It probably came really strongly about 10 or 15 years later, which wasn't that great, but that was sort of part of the vision. Those guys coming along, the likes of Little Creatures and the likes of Stone and Wood really helped drive the industry because with their advertising money, with their reach, with their distribution power, that really helped bring along the industry with them. So the likes of a few of us little guys were really the pioneers and started the underground movement. But it was the likes of those sort of guys that really made people stand up and take notice. And that sort of happened, I suppose, in that late 2000s when I remember when we started our own, when it took our venue in the mid 2000s, we're doing trying to load up website marketing and load up our website for our accommodation we just built in 2004. We were using dial-up in 2004, and I got sick of it and just stopped doing it. So you can imagine, the sort of the state of the industry back then. It was pretty early days and pretty crude. So, Holgate overview, we do own the freehold of our hotel and the site there. So the hotel, the land where we actually have built the new production brewery and the new tap room, we own all that. That's part of the business. When we were looking for somewhere, we started the business in 1999. 3 years later, we were looking somewhere to move our production to. We started in the shed in the backyard of our home, and the vision was, if we can get it started, we'll move it out and look for a retail space. It might be a greenfield site, it might be an existing pub, it might be something else. And we looked around a lot of things, and this pub came up. And one of the things that really attracted us to this pub was that it was nearby the train station. It was in only 2 minutes walk from the Woodend train station. It was the centre of Woodend. It was an existing hotel, beautiful old building that would just say no more. It's just gorgeous. Obviously, it was run down and had gone out of business and needed renovating, but it was a gorgeous spot. And to top everything off, it had land next door, which had the red line all around it. It was the original Cobb & Co stagecoach stop over to Bendigo, this hotel. So it had a big plot of land next to it, old stables up the back that we used for many, many years for storage and for keg cleaning and so on. But back then in 2002, when we bought that, or we took the lease over that site, that was the vision that one day we would actually use that land to expand into if and when needed, when our sales got up and the industry got rolling. So we've got 40 staff on our books, about 25 full-time equivalents. And that's something I'm really proud of. We wanted to start, we started the business primarily to indulge our passion, to do something that we love doing for our day job, and as well as to give us a job locally. But along the way, we created all these jobs, and there is something I am emotionally quite funny, really proud of. I'm thinking about a lot of uni kids, and my kids are in that space at the moment. Over the years, we've had so many local families whose kids have come through our business and have put themselves through uni working in the business. So it's fantastic. All right, Lucy, roll on. We've kind of done some of that family owned. There's Tash. You saw Tash early on talking. So yeah. So Tash and I met at uni way back when we were only 19. We've been together for Can't count 30 years. Tash is a real foodie, and she loves her food, she loves her restaurant, and I suppose doing this business indulged both our passions of restaurant, food, and the beer industry. And she's a CFO, she runs the finances of the business and keeps a tight control and everything like that. We do support the local community in many, many ways over the years. Since our kids were toddlers through the business, we've been supporting the local kindergartens and schools with donations and local footy clubs. I don't get to see this, but Tash fields, $2 or $3 quid a week for donations of beer for sponsorship and all that sort of stuff. And I suppose in a way we've got such a strong community. There must be at least a dozen, if not more, couples who have told me, there must be 20 couples who have told me that they've bought a house in Woodend on the strength of a day trip and visiting our pub, and particularly people from the UK and Europe who they wanted to buy somewhere where they could walk down to the local boozer and walk home again. So that's sort of the community that we've got there, that we really are dedicated to expanding and supporting and concentrating on. Tash says we've got 4 kids. Our daughter Emily was born in '98 when we were actually looking at brewing plants and doing the business planning for our business. So we started the business in '99 when she was 1 year old. Our second child, Tash says, is the brewery. So the brewery business started in '99. Third child was James, our son, who was born in 2000, and our fourth child was the hotel business, which we started in 2002. We bought that business in 2002. And it really was a key plank that we saw in the US a long time ago, was to have your own retail direct to public, and that really was a boon in those days when nobody wanted to know about craft beer. In fact, craft beer, there was no craft beer, the word wasn't even used when we started. So no one wanted to know about it too much. Oh, that's homebrew, mate, sort of thing. So having your own venue was a key plank that we really was part of our original business plan that we saw operating in the US. Okay, Lucy. So this is just a quick snapshot of the business as it stands today. So sales revenue this year posting about $6 million across the business. We're producing and selling in the order of 800,000 litres, or that's 8,000 hectolitres for those who are interested in that. With a recent expansion, we've got a capacity of around about 1 to 1.2 million litres. Under this fundraise, we'll be able to jump that capacity to 2.5 million litres. While my whole vision of the site and the way we've designed the building and built the new brew house and the way we've set it all up is that we can take this site to 5 million litres down the track if and when needed, and hopefully it's needed. Whether that's 5 years' time or 10 years' time, we can just keep on growing. So we're sort of future-proofed in a way with the setup we've done now with the building itself and with the brew house as the engine room, the new German fully automated brew house we've put in, that's the engine room. We can continue to drive that forward. So capacity is an interesting one. So it really is a question of 3 main concepts, and you chase your capacity. So there's brewing capacity, there's fermentation capacity, which is all about how many tanks you've got and how big the tanks are, and then there's packaging capacity. How big is your packaging machine? And so that's the question of capacity. So the management team, we've got obviously myself and Tash. We wear a number of hats and always have. For the first 10 years in the business, it was just me in the brewery. I was brewing on my own pretty much and delivering beer. Tash was delivering beer with the kids in the back of the car and all that. When we took over the hotel business in 2002, Tash became the GM of the hotel business and remains that today. And I'm the GM of the brewing business with the team under me. So I've got head brewer Chris Brady. He's science background, studied biochemistry in the UK, and he's been with Holgate for about 6 years. He's very well educated in the IBD brewing science course. And we've got at the bottom, in terms of the brewing, the brewery wholesale business, we've got Roy Lever, who's our national sales manager. He's got a strong background in beer, working for all of the big guys over the past 20 years. And in terms of the hotel staff, the hotel managers, Tash was a venue manager for many, many years. Last 4 years, we've got Colin, who's a venue manager. He's a professional publican. He's worked in the UK managing pubs. And we've got Stuart, who's the head chef and doing some fantastic food. So this is the company structure, and I suppose this is probably interesting to everybody, so I'll just explain that. So what people are investing in, where I own my shares in, is Holgate Group. So that's the holding company. That owns the site, it owns the freehold, it owns the title. It owns all of the shares in the other two trading businesses, as you can see there. So our original business that we started in 1999 was Holgate Brewhouse Proprietary Limited. We had a brewing company and it was a wholesale business. So it's a production and wholesale business. Then we started the pub business in 2002, which is really a lease, and that was Holgate Group started the pub business. When we bought the freehold in the mid-2000s, and that's when we first took on some investors, and we bought the freehold of our pub, and we had to renovate the whole thing. We took on some seed capital then. What ended up happening was that we really needed the company that owns the site and the freehold not to be the trading company. So our lawyers at the time gave us a bit of slap in the head and said, you can't have a company that owns the freehold also trading. So we created Holgate Hotel as the business, which is our hotel, hospitality, retail company that actually is the trading entity. So those two companies, all the profits and everything go back to Holgate Group. Holgate Group owns all the shares. So all of our shares are in Holgate Group, and they're the shares that we're issuing under this crowdfund. So the business model, historically over the past 20 years, we've pretty much had two businesses running. We've got the hospitality, retail, bar accommodation business, and direct to public retail sales. As I said, that's been an awesome business. There's not been a massive growth in that business over the long term, although I shouldn't say that. Over the long term, there has been massive growth in that business. It's grown 300% over the long term. But it generally grows about 10% per annum, and it's become a real tourist destination, our hotel business. We've got the accommodation there. It's always full on Saturday nights. We've got 10 rooms of really nice, stylishly refurbished B&B type accommodation. So it's a fantastic business, and it's a tap room and the cellar door for our beers. We really showcase the beers. It's got a strong local market where people are in there, the same people in there every afternoon coming in and drinking the beers and hanging out and chatting to their friends. And on the weekends, you're just inundated with, I would say, the inner city Melbourne set with their pushers and their prams, and it's just gorgeous to see. It's fantastic. You've got a lot of friends and family market. Woodend's not that far out of Melbourne, so you've got people coming up, visiting friends and family on the weekend, or particularly on the holidays. Any holiday period, long weekends, Christmas period, any period where there's holidays, that's super busy in that pub. And then we've got our wholesale markets. Our original business is in production and wholesale. So we sell through, particularly historically, through independent pubs and bars, independent liquor stores and trade. Not going to the major retailers. When we talk about major retailers, national retailers, we're talking about Woolworths, Dan Murphy's, we're talking about Coles, Liquorland, Vintage Cellars. So whilst historically in 20 years we have been in vintage cellars, not in a big way, we deliberately didn't go to the big guys. Back in those days, in the 2000s, you would have been deemed to have sold out if you actually sold your beer to Dan Murphy's. That's for one thing. And secondly, we didn't have the capacity really. We're tiny little space within our it was pretty much like this room, our original brewery within the pub that we were still, up until 2 years ago, was our only production space within the walls of the hotel. We didn't have the capacity, so we didn't really engage with those big guys. So we've pretty much, historically, our business model has been to sell to independent pubs and bars and the independent liquor store trade. And when you're talking about independent liquor stores, you're talking about people like the IGAs and the Celebrations and those types of people. Going forward, and what our vision has been and what we've been working towards with this building this whole new building, and I suppose this is probably stage 3 of three-stage expansion, new business model, is that with a new building, we've got a brand new tap room that's about to open alongside our new brew house with the beautiful windows in there, and it's a fantastic space. It's going to only enhance what we've seen as a real lucrative business model, is that tourism and destination experience. So having our new tap room and visitor centre there is fantastic. We've built our accommodation check-in inside the tap room within the brewing space, the new brewing space. And there you can see the new, it's not yet finished, so it's not yet open. It'll be opening up in October. So that's really going to enhance our retail experience and drive tourism and destination there. Part of that business model will be a local craft liquor hub, what we're talking about. So, you know, along with craft beer, there's been a real drive towards artisan produced other types of liquors, and particularly local ones. So you've got gins, you've got ciders, and of course what's been around forever and a day is some beautiful local wines. And a lot of local winemakers in Macedon Ranges, unlike other wine areas, a lot of fantastic small winemakers that either don't have a cellar door or midweek they don't open on cellar doors. So we'll be able to, what the plan is that we're going to, when we open this visitor centre in the next couple of months, we're going to have stocking these sorts of products, other local liquor producers for takeaway sales and for people to do a tasting experience. So we'll have visiting producers, whether it be local winemaker or one of the local gin guys. There's 3 of them in our area. There's Harcourt, it's just up the road, where, you know, the Harcourt apples, they're renowned. There's some fantastic cider makers there. There's Dalesford cider. There's another one we stock in our pub, Darrawheat Gwym cider. Actually, I grew up in Darrawheat Gwym, which is near Romsey. That was my hometown. There's a little tiny village. So there's some great cider makers. So what we want to do is we're going to have those products for sale as a takeaway, as a liquor store, and have one of the producers there every weekend to do tastings, promotions, and it gives another reason for people to come in. And while they're in there, obviously they're experiencing what Holgate's got to offer as well. And of course, a major growth opportunity is the production facility that we've installed already, and that we're going to grow onto, I should say, with this fundraise. So we've installed, as part of my vision, a high volume, high efficient, cost effective production facility. So a lot of other small brewers have gone with cheaper Chinese and United States manual equipment. Labour is very cheap in Asia, labour is very cheap in America, they can do those things there. My vision is that we're more like Europe in Australia. We've got pretty high labour costs, so my vision is that we've installed these types of European kit that we've done. So it's very efficient, a lot of it's nicely automated, very, very effective, and we can, on a small platform, if you like, a small footprint, although we've got it's probably 10 times what we had originally. On a grand scale, it's a small footprint. Having this type of equipment, we can really ultimately drive to 5 million litres. Business model going forward, yes, we can engage with the national retailers, and we've started that process. So that's where we're going to pick up a lot of volume going forward in the future, where we are engaging with those guys. It's not easy. Compared to even 5 years ago, there was only 200 breweries in Australia. There's now 600. So back in the mid 2000s, there was 50. When we first started, there was 6. So it's not an easy thing, but that is where we need to be. And part of the new business model, having that facility there, opens up that opportunity for us. In the past, as I said earlier, we weren't really able to engage with those guys because we didn't have the capacity. Of course, exporting. Even in the 2000s, I was knocking back export queries all the time. I said, look, we just don't have the capacity, don't have the real desire and need to do that. But about 5 years ago, I started saying, yes, okay, let's do that. And then we started doing some export because we knew that we were building this facility that's coming along, and it's just finished being completed with a new brew house. So we are exporting already, and that's a key platform driver, exporting to the Philippines, into Thailand, into Japan, into Malaysia, and a little bit into China. We're under discussions with a few Chinese distributors at the moment. So that is part of the new business model of where we can get growth from this facility, is coming from the export. And of course, this contract brands and co-manufacturing is another really key opportunity for us. And I saw way back in the late 2000s and the early teens, a lot of brands on the marketplace coming through that didn't have breweries. They were successful because the business owners, much to my disappointment, they could spend all their day doing marketing and on the phones and selling beer and that. I couldn't do that because A, it's not my forte, and B, I'm at the back making beer. So we sort of saw this is a wave that's coming. There's a lot of people who just want to sell beer, and their expertise is in marketing. Okay, fantastic. Well, if someone's going to make that beer, well, why shouldn't it be me? Why shouldn't it be our business? So part of the reason for putting it in its production facility is so we can take those opportunities. And since we've just only completed the new brew house, and obviously we've still got fermentation and canning to come along, which is part of this fundraise, but since we've got the new brew house installed last December, we've been advertising and promoting and talking and word of mouth, and I do a lot of networking, and we have already entered that market and got some contract work coming along. We're talking with some major companies about some novel stuff like non-alcoholic fermented beverages and things like that. So it doesn't have to be beer. This opens up a new business opportunities for us. We're just talking purely business. When we started our business, we didn't start it to be a craft brewery. We started it to make beer that we love making, that we love to drink, I should say. So we weren't necessarily trying to enter the craft beer market and be the most hoppiest, craziest beer out. That hadn't been on the scene. So I see it as a business opportunity to use our facility even just for contract packaging. We've already done some contract packaging for some cider makers in Harcourt where they don't have their own facility. They're shipping their stuff up to Mildura to get packed off, so we can do that. We don't need to ferment it. We don't need to do anything. They just ship it down to us a tanker. We pop it in, carbonate it up, and put it through our packaging line. So there's some other revenue streams that we can take. And having invested in those in a facility, then we can drive that as another revenue. So expansion and development, what are we planning to do going forward? We've already spoken about that we have done this expansion. We've got the new building in place, the new brew house in place. We've done all the hard work, I reckon, so anyone coming on board, you've got it easy in a way. So as I mentioned before, with the brew house there, we can drive up to 2.5 million litres very easily, but we don't have the fermentation capacity, and we need a canning machine to really drive that for marketing reasons. So to go to 2.5 million litres, we need to meet the market expectation demand on cans. We're closing in, I suppose, in a way with our fermentation capacity at full capacity now. For expansion, develop to grow that Holgate brands, then we really need, and it's a key platform that is, I suppose, breaking new ground for Holgate in a way is to actually do some marketing. We're part of this fundraiser is to really take our marketing to the next level. Back in the 2000s when we first started, we didn't really need to do marketing. You put your shingle out there, you're one of only a few breweries, people are flocking to you, and you didn't really need to do too much. That's not the case today. Obviously, there's a lot of noise, a lot of brands out there. In the meantime, social media has come along and all that sort of stuff. So there's so much trade marketing to do, direct consumer marketing, consumer awareness that we need to do, and that will really, putting a lot of effort into that area will really lift our brand to the next level. So that's not for the contract brands, obviously. That's a separate revenue stream that I can personally focus on doing that. Well, I get the team like Lucy and Brett to focus on the marketing side and the selling side to drive the Holgate brand. So we've got a couple of different avenues to increase the business there. The new brew house is begging, the new building, I should say, the roof is begging to have solar installations all over it. I've wanted to do this for a long, long time. I think it's such a cool idea, I really do. I'm a bit of a latent hippie at heart, and we've installed a lot of environmental initiatives already with water treatment. This factory we've put in collects the hops. Instead of dumping it all down the drain, it collects them, it puts them into the spent grain that goes out with the farmer, and the pigs eat it. So we're doing things like that to reduce our solids down the drain. This brew house itself is so efficient that reduces our water per litre. So there's some international benchmarks on how much water you use to make a beer, and if you're really sloppy, you use 10 litres of water to make 1 litre of beer going out your door. Top shelf manufacturing is probably 3 litres of water per litre of beer that you put out. So we're not at that level, but we probably were 8 or something, I suppose, I don't know. But putting in the new factory, this new German factory is very efficient and automated, so that we reduce our water consumption, which I think is a fantastic thing. And the next extension of that is solar. We can fill the whole roof with solar panels, with a 75 kilowatt system, and it will all be used. All the power that's used will be used during the daytime. We'll have nothing to export. So it's a no-brainer to put solar on, and it's a great thing to do for the environment, and it's a good marketing story too, for sure. And the other depending on how much we raise, and there's some other some nice things we'd like to do in terms of our packaging line and quality control equipment. So that's sort of a bit of a nutshell about where funds raised are going to be applied. So pretty much canning machine, packaging line, fermenters, marketing and solar are the key sort of things we're looking at. That's the new tap room. So if you come up, that'll be open in a couple of months. If you're on the top tier investment, which I hope you're all going to be, then you'll get a special invite to the VIP opening in October. So in October, we're planning on the 5th of October. We've already got the invitations out to industry. It's a VIP industry event which celebrates our 20 years in business. We've been building up to this. If you've seen our double decade series beers out in the marketplace, we're building up to celebrate our 20 years in business with a grand party, and it's going to double as the launch of this new tap room and brew house showroom. So it's going to be a pretty good event. And I suppose this probably just, if you just have a bit of a read of that, probably encapsulates a lot of what I've been saying already about who we are and what we're trying to do. So we're definitely, one of our goals is to be the #1 regional craft brewer in Victoria, if we're not already. This capacity that we're putting in will actually make us the biggest capacity in regional Victoria. Well, outside of Little Creatures, if you consider Geelong regional, but we'll have the biggest capacity in regional Victoria and biggest capacity of even a lot of metro breweries for sure. Values and objectives, and this comes back to my brewing philosophy and my business philosophy. Everything's traditional and natural. I suppose I started my interest in brewing started well before as a teenager. I was always grew up with my mum baking cakes and so on and so forth. By the time I was a teenager, I was making bread and making jam, ginger beer and so on. I used to always think, before modern times, before you could go to the supermarket to buy that item, how did they used to make it in the old days? As a teenager, that used to intrigue me and drive me, and I was really interested in creating. So that's sort of part of that, when I get that old hippie sort of in me, part of that traditional and natural way of making beer. And obviously we've talked about being sustainable, environmentally conscious as possible. I love the idea of being innovative and trying things out. I'm a real sort of let's suck it and see sort of guy. Let's try that and just see what happens. We were one of the first to introduce IPAs. We had our first IPAs were released by Holgate in 2008. Or we were one of the first to start a brewery for starters. So when there was no industry. So that's being innovative in itself, I would think. Sour beers. I took a bit of convincing to get into sour beers back in the mid teens in 2014, 15. I'd spent so many years keeping these bugs out of the beer. They deliberately introduced them as like, my God, what are you doing? But I had a bit of an epiphany, we got behind and did a lot of research. I thought, yeah, this is really cool. I actually do really love these things, and started making some wild, crazy beers. And part of the new tap room is going to be to showcase. We've got 16 taps there. You saw the bank. Is to showcase experimental beers and a range of sour beers. So there's a point of difference to our main pub bar, which is just 50 metres up the road, in the same site. So those sorts of things are what we're really keen on exploring. Definitely community focus, as I've said before. When we first started our bar back in 2002, we wanted to create a venue where a single female coming off the train at 5 p.m. on a Friday night would feel welcome to walk in the front door, order a champagne or a piece of cake or whatever. And that's the sort of venue. Or a beer. Back in those days, it wasn't beer. So we had a consultant come through in the late 2000s, and they were getting the government money for doing consultants. Said, "Oh yeah, I know the guy. I'll do the whole thing." And the whole recommendation came back to make money was to put in pokies. And I said, "Let's just not what we're about. Spend all this time with you, and you recommend pokies." So those sorts of things, are really not what we're about. I've really been interested in being a single site operation. We made a decision a long time ago when we bought the pub that we would expand on our own site. We wouldn't go and lease industrial sites somewhere. We wouldn't go and contract our beer to someone else. So we've never done that. No one's ever made Holgate beer for us. We've made plenty of beer for other people. We perhaps could have gone and done that like what Mountain Goat did many years ago. They reached their capacity at Richmond. They went and contracted their beer making out to Asahi. It's another way that people do it, obviously, and we're taking on business like that now from other people. But we decided that we wanted to make our own beer, and necessarily during that late 2000s and through the teens we stayed necessarily small because of that, because we made that decision. But now we've got the single site operations. That was a key part of our plank. I saw plenty of breweries in the States that had that. They had their original brew pub, and then they had their big production brewery next door. So yeah, and we've talked about regional Victoria. Quality investment. I come, my background before I started the business was working for multinationals. I worked for one of the Unilever subsidiaries. I understand about how businesses tick and about getting a return, that type of thing. So we want this business to be a quality investment. We want it to be great for the employers as well. Would love to get a employee share scheme going as well as part of that thing. So employer of choice is what we're looking for. It's a place of fun. And being conscious of, you hear a lot of stories in the newspapers about wage theft and being paying underage. And for a long time, more than 10 years, more than that even, we've said we're not paying any cash to anybody, and we don't. It's all above board. Everything's paid through the books. We even got audited by the tax department at one point many years ago, because they said your wages are too high, or you're obviously hiding. You're obviously trying to hide your margin to show your margin lower. So they thought something was amiss, and we're saying no, we're just paying people properly and not paying under the table stuff. So we really are paying everybody at least all the casuals straight up and down the award rate, and it's all through the books. Australian craft beer industry, as you probably all know since you're here, is a fantastic story. It's continuing to grow. It's gone through some boom times, and it is still growing. These are official figures, from IBIS, 6.3%. But I think actually the growth is probably higher than that. It'd be interesting if Brett's got a take on that. We can ask him later on. The US was, we're following the US in many ways, and still got a long way to catch up. The US industry is probably around 15% of craft beer now, whereas Australia, depending on who you class as craft beer, but would be between 7 and 9% or something like that. So there's still a lot of growth coming in this industry. It's still dominated by consumers drinking mainstream beer for the two big companies. So there's a lot of growth opportunities in craft beer still in Australia. I think I've probably spoken a lot about our vision, and so I'll just talk quickly through this slide so let's get on to questions. Obviously, we had a vision way back in '97 about look, it's going to be a good thing to start a small brewery, even though no one was doing it. I think it's going to come, and we had this vision that it would come, and it did. I've read some articles about the big future in the craft beer industry is brew pubs and destinations, and there's been a huge number of new entrants in the US, but also in Australia, that are just tiny nano breweries and breweries that are just direct to public sales only, and they're talking about this as a new innovation. I'm saying, well, we saw that long ago. That's what we were already doing, and the reasons we were doing it was the same. Back in 2002, when we were looking for a site, we had the vision then to say, well, this site is going to be fantastic for the business in the long term. When the industry takes off and we need to expand, we've got the land there to do it. It's part of the hotel site. That empty site was classed as a hotel, so we could have put up a hotel building there. And going forward, part of my vision, as I mentioned to you already, is to invest in that high-tech and efficient production equipment. You can get the job done quickly. You don't have to do a lot of overnight shifts. A lot of small breweries put in small capacity stuff, and they're wrangling their equipment and their staff overnight, doing late night shifts and things like that, where bad stuff happens, and staff don't like it, and staff retention, all that sort of stuff. So that's one of the reasons we do that as well. But also because back, when I first started going to the States and doing judging in the States and touring breweries there, you could see the tsunami of, if you go there and see those things, it's another world, it really is. They're just huge mega businesses. Most of those big brand name American craft breweries, they're way bigger than Cooper's, for example. So it's a huge tsunami. So I sort of saw back then that we better start thinking about how do we protect ourselves, and part of it is to grow bigger, and part of it is to be really cost effective and be producing really efficiently. And of course, going forward, the vision, what we've seen in our own business and what we're building on is that craft beer tourism and people coming out and visiting. In a way, that helps raise our brand awareness back in Melbourne and elsewhere by people coming and visiting. So part of the vision is to really push that part of the business, and as well as contract and co-manufacturing, which I've spoken about. So I suppose getting to where you guys might be really interested, and no doubt there'll be many questions on this, and I'll just cover this off quickly. So what are you actually investing in? Well, you're investing in Holgate Group, the holding company, which I mentioned earlier on. They're ordinary shares. They're the same class of shares that I own, Natasha own, everyone owns. There's no second class shares. It's all equity. It's real equity, unlike Brewdog model in the early days where you got a free box of beer, I think, for your money. This is real equity. Indulge in the business. We really want people to be part of the team. Whether you're a smaller investor and buying the beer, recommending it to your friends, liking us on social media, being part of that team, or whether you're actually in the industry and you've got some input, some ideas, or you own some pubs or whatever, and you want to sell. We want to see our investors as part of the extended team. Tash and I have done this on our own, I suppose, for a long time, and we're excited the next phase of our business. Our kids are just left home; they're at uni, sort of thing. We're really excited about sharing the journey and inviting people to really be part of the team. And in all seriousness, we're happy to explore ideas and let people come in and have a chat, and if they've got some great ideas. So with the returns, we've got rewards and incentives package that are usually offered, and I suppose part of that reason is to give something for particularly for the smaller investors, and also while we're waiting for the business to be able to pay dividends. Obviously, we can't promise a dividend straight up, but when profits allow, then we do plan to pay dividends. And I'm really keen for anyone coming into business to pay them a dividend. I want to pay a dividend because that means I'm getting a dividend. And I tell you, I'm heavily invested in paying dividends because I want it. So I spent many years getting no salary in the early days for many years, and then way below salary, and then sort of an okay salary, but nowhere near probably what I would have got or should get. So I'm keen on dividends. So we are keen on paying dividends. Obviously, we can't promise exactly what it's going to be, when it's going to be. But we're thinking that as soon as we can pay, we'll definitely pay the minimum of that, which is 5%. But obviously, I suppose the larger carrot for everybody as well is that if there is a major share exchange at some point in time, whether it's the company doing a share buyback, or whether it's an exit strategy from us, whether we get a third party coming in, doing a partial buyout or full buyout at some point in time down the track. So I suppose on that point, I'm not in any hurry to get out of the business. I'm only 51. I've got a lot of energy still left. We just finished this new project. I wouldn't know what I'd do with myself if I wasn't running this business. So full investors in staying for the long haul. But there are obviously opportunities that you can't say no to along the way, and there might be some opportunities down the track. Who knows? So I suppose these are some of the things that we've been brainstorming in our team, and we're just canvassing. So I'll throw it over to you guys. What do you think's good? What do you think's lame? What are you interested in? Speak up. Send me an email. Send me a text. Happy to canvass some views. We're just finalising. I've mentioned to a few people. We're just finalising the offer document. We're coming out in the next week or 2 weeks, so we're just finalising these things. Obviously, these rewards will be available for different levels, different tiers of investment. So I won't go through all of them, but if you've got some ideas, then I'm welcome to hear your ideas. So take a photo, send me an email, whatever.